Hi and welcome everybody to the Fertility podcast, where you will be empowered to learn how to thrive and conceive with endometriosis. If you want to understand more about your endo, how this can affect your fertility, and how you can personally take action to optimise your health and life, then this is the place for you. I'm your host, Dr. Lizzie Alexander, the Fertility Specialist, and I'm a marine biologist turned integrative nutrition and health coach and holistic massage therapist. Most importantly, I know what it's like to have chronic fatigue, endo, and struggle with fertility. I am now a super busy yet thriving wife, business owner, and mother of a gorgeous little boy. Join me every Wednesday as I jump into topics that will support and guide your healing and fertility journey, from health and nutrition, lifestyle, emotional and spiritual support, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Resource Library. Inside the library, you'll discover the free resource hub with 3 great downloadable products to get you started. An ebook called 5 Ways to Start Dropping Your Pain and Optimise Your Fertility. A short guide to sperm health, great for getting your man started on improving his own health. And an infographic with 88 things I did to get pregnant. Make sure to check out the show notes for the link. Hey everyone, this is episode 40 and the last episode of season 2. Now, I did miss getting it out last week, and this was because I had to follow my own advice and realise something had to give when I wasn't feeling very well. So with it being the last episode, there will be a break until next season, which will be starting in January 2022, which is actually not that far away now. So if you missed any episodes, make sure you go back and check them out whilst we've got no new episodes coming out. So just to give you an update of what I'm going to be working on whilst I'm not recording the podcast, the first is my online 4-month Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis course. So I can help more women through a combination of self-study, group courses and to one-to-one coaching, because not everyone can afford one-to-one coaching. The other exciting thing I've almost finished is an online series of short courses to support your nutritional and lifestyle needs through pregnancy once you get there. Now, I've done this as I've had a good number of clients get pregnant this year, and things do change when you get pregnant in terms of what nutritional needs are to support you and your baby, especially in the first trimester and then again in the third trimester at the end of the pregnancy, through labour and then postpartum and during breastfeeding. This is especially important because if you want to then keep a handle on your endometriosis and adenomyosis, and you're wanting to consider having further children as part of your plan to grow a family. And if you add on top of this, if you are sort of over 35, this is an even more important thing to really make sure that you're on top of your overall health. So just make sure you're on my waiting list. I'll put the link in the show notes, as you'll be the first to know about these courses when they're ready, and I will be offering early bird discounts to various things. I will of course be posting on social media like Facebook, Instagram, but of late I have not been that present just because there's been so much juggling to do with it all, and I'm learning what my limits are working part-time. So to get onto the podcast this week, I'm really pleased to share my conversation with Sarah Clark, a functional fertility coach from Canada, on all things to do with male fertility and how to get your man involved in improving his nutrition and lifestyle. There are lots of great resources and links in the show notes on my podcast page of the website endofertilityspecialist.com. So make sure to go and check them out. It includes a link to a 4-part podcast series by Sarah on male fertility, which is fantastic because obviously one episode just can't do enough justice on this. So this really dives further into it. A free fertility diet challenge, which she's got, and links to lifestyle tips that we talked about in the episode. So here's a bit of an introduction. So when Sarah Clark was 28 years old, she received a diagnosis of premature ovarian failure. She accepted the diagnosis and had both her children through in vitro fertilization and egg donors. So years later, though, she realised the root cause of her infertility, which was food intolerance. So since then, she's made it her life's work to go on and help other women. So she's become a certified life coach with accreditation from the International Coaches Federation, and a health coach with training from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. She is author of Fabulously Fertile, Supercharge Your Fertility Naturally, Fabulously Fertile Cookbook, and Fertility Preparation Program. Her fertility coaching program, which includes functional lab testing, supports couples to make diet and lifestyle changes that dramatically improve the chances of a healthy pregnancy and baby. On her Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, she shares that with functional medicine and natural fertility solutions, we can eventually reverse infertility. Finally, before we get started, I will apologise for some of the sketchy sounds in some places. I've removed a lot, but there was a poor internet connection during the recording with a few jumps here and there. So without further delay, here's our chat. Hi, Sarah. It's wonderful to have you on the podcast. I can't wait to dive into male fertility today with you, as it's something that isn't talked much about and we've not covered it yet on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So if it's okay with you, I would be grateful if we could start with sharing a bit about your own fertility journey, as I know that you've had your own struggles to conceive, and this can often be really interesting because it kind of gives you an idea behind what's driven you in terms of kind of like your career, etc., and how you've then gone on to help other couples.
Yeah, sure. So in my early 20s, I remember having irregular cycles. My cycle came a couple times a year. Back then, I thought that was a good thing. Obviously, that was an indicator there was something drastically wrong. So I had the irregular cycles. I had yeast infections. I had a weird fungal rash on my chest. I had acne in my teens. I had great skin. Then all of a sudden, in my early 20s, I'm like, what's this adult acne? And so the first line of defense, I went on the pill and didn't address any of those underlying issues. The acne got slightly better, but not really. And then I had this life plan of getting married at 25, and I'm about to celebrate 25 years of marriage actually in like
3 weeks.
So I'm like, oh my goodness. But yeah, so I got married at 25, and then the life plan was to have my kids at 28. So I went on the pill until just before 28 or so, and went off, and the cycle was still irregular. And so we wanted to go in and get some testing. So I got some testing with my OBGYN. And that's when I was told I had premature ovarian insufficiency or failure, as it was once called. And the only way, which is the loss of function of the ovaries before the age of 40, and was told the only way I'd ever have children is by using donor eggs. And I remember her like reaching up on her shelf and grabbing the IVF brochure and giving it to me and saying, off you go to the fertility clinic. And I didn't get a second opinion. I didn't even take any time to grieve because I'm like a major action person. So I'm like, okay, I better. And I didn't think of those other symptoms that were going on in my body. So I went off to the clinic, and we were lucky enough on the first fresh transfer to have our daughter. So back then we were doing, so the person that donated her eggs, she was experiencing male factor infertility. So in return for us paying for their IVF, she then donated half her eggs. They've since stopped that program in Canada. But yeah, so we were lucky on our first fresh transfer to have our daughter. Our daughter's about to turn 20 this year. So many years ago, like I got the donor profile came in the mail. So and it's anonymous. I didn't have any pictures. Just I had the medical history for the donor. I'm like super tall, like 6 foot. So I wanted to make sure I at least had some sort of a tall donor. So, and obviously like looking at the medical history and someone that was like sort of close to my characteristics, but there was no picture. So I wouldn't really know. And then we had 2 embryos left over, and we wanted to have the kids close together. And my husband, so I was like, after a year, my daughter was a year old. I'm like, okay, I'm going back to use those embryos. And my husband's like, Sarah, you seem a little stressed. Let's just hang on. And I'm like, nope, I'm going back in. And those embryos didn't work. And then we went on another list for a new donor. Same thing. She was going through male factor infertility. Gave us half her eggs. And we were lucky enough on the first fresh transfer to have our son. And he is 16. And so almost 17. So they're both 3 years apart. And then, so really after I had my daughter, my health kind of took a nosedive. I remember like one year I had 9 colds. Every cold went to a sinus infection. I thought it was a great idea to take antibiotics for every cold. So completely obliterated my healthy gut bacteria. I had chronic bladder infections. It was like peeing blood. I became allergic to all the antibiotics because I kept taking antibiotics every time I go in there. Like, just write me a prescription. I kept taking them. The yeast infections became chronic. The sinus infections, as I was saying. I had vertigo, toenail infections, dandruff. The acne got worse. But actually, if you had to put a questionnaire to say how my health was, I still would have said it was excellent, because I didn't really feel all these things where they were sort of an inconvenience. I'm like, okay, I'll just take antibiotics and I'll just get on with it. But looking back, obviously my immune system was not in good shape. So I was in HR at the time, and I wanted to take a life coaching course to bring coaching into the corporate environment. So during that life coaching course, I had my own personal wake-up call, and discovered I really loved health and wellness. Took a health coaching course, and that's when I discovered I had these food sensitivities. So for me, when I took out dairy and gluten, my infections started to go away. Later on, discovered also corn, took that diet. And then a couple of years, still, like, I was way better, but not quite. So did some stool testing, found out I had some gut infections, so addressed those. And then underneath all of this actually was chronic stress. And actually, when I was going through infertility, I actually would have said I wasn't stressed out, but I had TMJ where I couldn't even open my mouth. So I'm like,
caused your stress.
So,
yeah,
completely. But I'm very action oriented. Like, let's just go and do it kind of person. So, but yeah, chronic stress the whole way along. Didn't discover any of this stuff until I was 40, like the functional side of things. So really devoting my time to help couples with low AMH, high FSH, diminished ovarian reserve, or premature ovarian insufficiency, either get pregnant naturally, or if they do need to go to the clinic, getting pregnant with their own eggs, using the principles of a functional approach.
That's quite a story. It sounds like you really went through the mill, and I think it's amazing how we can be busy and we don't think we're stressed, particularly if you're that type A, where it's like just busy, busy, busy. And you can, like you said, you can have these ailments that are not crippling, they're irritating, and you just kind of like push them to the side. But if you added them all up, they become something. You just don't realize that they are something. So yeah, it sounds like it took you, like me, a long time to kind of learn and understand what your body was trying to tell you. But amazingly, you've turned it on its head, and you now help so many other couples, which I think is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Now, male fertility, diving into male fertility, which is what I really wanted to talk about today. It's not talked about enough. I know that not often, men are not advised that they're infertile unless, of course, they have 0 sperm. And it's considered that they only need 1 sperm to conceive. So, when you talk about from a functional medicine perspective, having low sperm count or poor quality sperm is going to, of course, reduce your chances of conceiving, especially if you then combine it with a woman who's got, say, endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, low AMH, high FSH, etc. And I know that there are crazy statistics out there about male fertility that we're just not taking seriously. For example, how male fertility is reduced since the 1930s, but parameters that we're measuring male fertility, it's just we've reduced those markers rather than actually face up to the fact there's an issue and trying to identify what that issue is. And I know particularly recently in the last year, there's been talk that actually if we continue this way, with our sort of health towards male infertility, that this will be reduced to 0 in 20 to 30 years. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I just find it really, really scary that we are not focusing on this enough.
Yeah, that's like in the very beginning, I was just coaching women and on the fertility journey. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm like missing the whole other equation. It takes 2 to have a baby. And even though we're primarily dealing with female factor infertility, we're now more and more seeing someone like you're saying with DOR or POI, the low AMH and high FSH combined with male factor. So I just interviewed for my podcast, Get Pregnant Naturally, Dr. Shauna Swan. And she's the author of the new book, Count Me In. and her book is based on a 2017 study. It talks primarily about male fertility, but also like the health of the sperm, but also about egg health. And she found in that study over the last 4 years, male fertility has declined by over 50%. And now it's showing, used to be 60-40 for female factor and then male factor. Now it's 50-50. So, and her book, it's actually really, she's a scientist, years of research behind her, and I had a team that, developed this study. And she's been on every major news outlet and like had a PBS special in the last, probably the book came out in February, I think. And so she's been literally ringing the alarm bell saying, like, stop the insanity, like our environment is impacting our fertility and the human race is really at stake. Like The Handmaid's Tale, where there's, only a few women running around carrying babies because of all the toxic waste we're exposed to. Is real. So, and then in her book, it's like, it's a wake up call, but it's also like, it's empowering because there's things we can do. Because a lot of the times when we have these fertility diagnoses where we, like myself, I'm like, okay, I just go over here. And I didn't even think that I had all sorts of underlying health issues going on that I could have addressed with, nutrition and lifestyle changes, but no one told me and I didn't even know what to look for. So for male fertility, there's lots of things to do, similar to female fertility, lots of things to do to improve the health. And it's not just about focusing on the poor semen, like the semen quality, if it's low. And even if it's not low, it still could be, from a functional standpoint, low. And then there's missed healing opportunities because, it's not just, we've spoken to many couples, and the woman has had extensive testing. She's changed her diet. She's thrown out all the toxins, and the man, he's equally supportive, but he may not know what to do. And he may not have done any of those other changes because he's been told everything's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's what I want to draw the attention to, is the fact that in the medical community, they're told they're fine. And as far as they're aware, it's really difficult to actually come back off that and say, yeah, okay, you might be fine by conventional Western sort of medicine standards, but those standards are so low. There's definitely things that you can do to make your sperm quality and semen far more optimal to increase your chances as a couple to conceive. And just to go back to one of your points there, I think it's really good because we can focus on the doom and gloom, which is what we don't necessarily want to do. Is what you've said is there is so much that we can do. It's just that that's not necessarily being told to couples when they find out that they're struggling with fertility or they've got unexplained, infertility. They're not necessarily being told there's a lot you can do before you get sort of shoved towards the IVF as that kind of like end point.
Yeah, exactly. They're it's like, wait a minute, you go to your OBGYN or you go to your physician and they're said, oh, wait, there's an issue. Off you go to the clinic. And meanwhile, you've got other underlying issues that no one's addressing and no one's looking at it. And the conventional approach is like the pill for an ill. Oh, wait, something's off. Here you go. But, you see different specialists. You'll see the dermatologist, the gastroenterologist, all the different specialists. And then no one's talking to each other. And it's like looking at the whole body.
No, exactly. And that's what you and I both come from, that same, the functional approach takes that whole body approach. Mm-hmm. Now, what matters when it comes to male fertility? What is the difference between the different measures of like sperm count, motility, semen volume, morphology, etc.? I think that'd be quite a good place to maybe start.
Yeah, I don't have my stuff in front of me, but basically it's like looking at, so we look at semen analysis based on functional reference ranges, and we're going through all of them, and there's different basically for functional reference ranges, they're for healthy people, whereas the conventional reference range for blood work, for semen analysis, is for people with disease. So they're not optimal levels. So the functional levels, it's kind of, that's why things are, if you're being told something is low normal, while in a functional reference range, it would be quite low. And why is it low? So it's looking at all the different, like the motility, the count, the DNA fragmentation, the liquefaction, all of the different markers, and looking at them through a functional reference range to see what has been missed. But again, it's not about, like, we don't myopically focus on the semen analysis. Our thing is more to look at the blood chemistry review, and we're not physicians, so it's not about diagnosing, it's to educate. So we're looking at full blood chemistry, like including thyroid, glucose, cholesterol, vitamin D, all of these markers, and then that then tells us, gives us clues. It's all telling a story, coupled with the health history. And then we're looking at functional testing, such as food sensitivity testing, stool testing, hair tissue mineral analysis testing. So, like, especially if there is something off from a conventional standpoint, like, you definitely want a blood chemistry review to say, wait a minute, what's been missed? And then if you've been trying to get pregnant, you're not successful, and you're maybe being told that from the male standpoint, everything is fine, it's still important to do the blood chemistry review to see, well, what else, how do we get the male partner's health to be optimal?
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's a really good explanation there, because it's too easy to focus on, the different measures of sperm and semen analysis, but it is about the whole body. It's taking that back, looking at the blood chemistry, like you said, thyroid, etc., etc. I mean, I've had quite a few couples where they've come and you've actually, the guys have filled in a health history form and then found actually they've got really poor gut health and they've got this, that, etc., infections. And just by clearing that up has made a marked difference on their fertility. So yeah, it's that taking that whole body view, not just focusing on the sperm. Now, one of the things that, I'll come on to it in a second, because I was going to come on to that mindset piece with men. But I think, first of all, I'll talk about how male fertility can be affected. So this is going into sort of semen rather than the whole body sort of approach. How can semen be affected? Things like DNA fragmentation, oxidative stress. Could you explain what this means and how this occurs, just so that women out there can understand it, but men can also understand how sperm can be affected by things that are going on out in the outside environment that will then affect the quality of their sperm?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff they may know, but like with the endocrine disruptors, so like plastics, which are like known endocrine disruptors. So making sure, like, we started off with everyone making sure they're not drinking out of a plastic water bottle, even if it is BPA free, that can still impact the quality of egg and sperm. For both egg and sperm, EMFs, so electromagnetic EMF, is it field or force?
Frequency. I think it's frequency.
Frequency, yeah. EMF, frequency. And so, like, you're taking your cell phone out of your pocket, not putting the laptop on the lap. Like, they have cell phone protective cases. Defender Shield has some good options, and if you have to have your laptop on your lap, there's laptop shields too. So I have one of those. You just put that on your lap, and then you're not, frying your. Yeah, the common ones with, like, not heating the testicles, which I think some people know. Many people so we start people with the elimination diet. So it's the gold standard to figure out if there's a food sensitivity. Soy, a phytoestrogen that can impact male fertility and female. It's a top allergen, and it's typically soy is genetically modified, so that can then impair sperm quality from the environmental standpoint. So I'm just thinking, hang on. Like the water piece, making sure you have filtered water. There's over 300 toxins, like contaminants in tap water. So you want to make sure you get a good water filter. That can then, a lot of the water can be filled with birth control remnants, and like these xenoestrogens, which then you see men with female characteristics, with the male boobs or the hips and things like that. That can be, from the environmental, for all the plastics we're exposed to. So I think the environmental side of things that's what that study with Dr. Shonda Swan in her book Count Me In talked a lot about plastics and um, male fertility, and then obviously the quality of the egg.
Yeah, and I think that's a really useful point, is the plastics. And I know that by default, if the women are doing quite a lot within the home, there will be that kind of like roll-on effect. But there will still be things where the guy will go out to work, they'll do things differently that won't be sort of within the home. So you might have a water filter at home, but if they're not aware of those changes, they won't necessarily then carry that on into when they're away from the home, because they won't have that understanding, because it's not been necessarily talked about. So I think that's really useful to be aware of it. And I know with the plastic bottles, I used to live in the Middle East, a couple of different countries out there, and it's out there, not lucky enough to be able to have sort of really reliable tap water. There's a big reliance on sort of bottled water, which then in the transportation sits out in really high temperatures. And of course, it leaches into the water. And then also, some of the meat quality has hormones in them. And it was amazing actually seeing that. And I have seen it in one of these countries. There was actually a study where a lot of the men were growing boobs because of sort of those xenoestrogens making a massive effect that were coming in, and they weren't being controlled through legislation, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think it's a really good point that you've brought up there, is about the xenoestrogens, plastics, water filters, that kind of thing.
And also, yeah, as the personal care piece, like we always have people start off by moving, not throwing everything in the garbage, but basically taking all of your current personal care and moving to a non-toxic option. As that one expires, you get a new one. You go to the skin deep database. You want the rating below 3, and it can be typically for the men. They don't have as many products. I'm generalizing as a woman, so they can switch those over. But when I talk to men and women, many of the women are like 80%, they switched over, and then the guys are maybe at 20%. They haven't switched over, and they haven't necessarily thought about it. They're like, oh, wait, I'm using like Old Spice and Dove. And they're like, is that okay? I'm like, no, that's, so go and look at it on the Skin Deep database, and you can see exactly what's in it. And there's a list of the 12 endocrine disrupting chemicals, and really what to look for, and how each of those chemicals is then impacting fertility. Same with the cleaning products too that you're using. That's got the same thing, to switch to non-toxic options. It can be overwhelming. That's why you want to do it, step by step, as each thing expires, to look into it.
Yeah. And I would totally agree. And it's what I say to my clients is the same, is because it can be overwhelming, and also people don't want to waste money, but it's easy enough to do then, as you said, over time as things kind of expire. And if you do it slowly, you also don't realize that you're actually doing it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's, do the big things that come into contact with your skin as well. There are some things which, if you don't use them that often, it's not as critical. Whereas, your washing powder, your washing up, your shower gel, if you're coming into contact with you every day, then it's definitely more critical than, say, I don't know, eyeshadow that you only use once a month because you don't wear it that much,
Mm-hmm.
Not that, yeah. Are there any health or medical conditions? I know you touched a little bit on this before, gut health, that kind of thing, but really affects male fertility, that need to be factored in when considering a couple's chance of conceiving naturally?
Yeah, I guess some of the themes we see, and there's similar to the female fertility. So we see thyroid issues with men. So just looking at the TSH, being told that's normal, then not getting a full panel. So thyroid dysfunction. We see a lot of blood sugar issues, like with blood sugar being not necessarily like it's on the way to diabetes, so maybe pre-diabetic or before. Again, the functional reference ranges, they're for healthy people, so it really flags it before it goes that way. We see issues with either low cholesterol, but then like high triglycerides. So like something being off there. We see a lot of low vitamin D, single digits in teens. Functional range, it should be between 60 to 80, or now there's even studies showing it more. We regularly see vitamin D being off, which that can be an indicator of gut issues, thyroid issues, perhaps autoimmunity. We always see food sensitivities. Like people come into us and they're like, "Oh, I'm eating a clean diet." And, I've made all these changes, and then we do the elimination diet, which, it's 10 days. You kind of suck it up for 10 days and then systematically reintroduce the foods over 30, and then tweak it with food sensitivity testing. And we always see, particularly for the women, we're seeing gluten off the chart. Men can still have, like, if there's leaky gut, we can see men being intolerant to, all their favorite foods. So as you heal the gut, you can bring back most of those foods in. It's not like you're taking these favorite foods out forever. So it's like 60 to 90 days. Then you heal the gut, and then you can bring the foods back in. If something is really high, like if you want, and typically the top allergens being gluten and dairy or corn, soy, if those are really high, then you may not be able to bring them back in. But, most of them you can bring back in. And then we see gut infections. We see a lot of, with like H. pylori being passed back between couples, which is passed via saliva. So, and that lowers your stomach acid. So you're eating that nice organic nutrient dense diet, and maybe you're not absorbing the nutrients. So we see that piece. And then also we see like heavy metals. So depending if maybe they don't have a water filter. So we're seeing people with like uranium, which could be if they're in a rocky area, maybe they're taking, some of the that can be in their water. It's interesting. We've done many work with people like farmers, and you see their hair tissue mineral analysis, and it's like, oh my God, it's freaking shocking. Like people with like high levels of different like pesticides and heavy metals coming up. Like off the chart for some of these things that they're exposed to.
So many useful things there. And I think it's interesting where you said the farmers. It's one of the questions I always ask is kind of like, what does your husband do as a job? And what do your grandparents, what did your grandparents do as a job? Because of course that could be tri-generational and being brought down. And it is amazing how certain job types can really increase the exposure to some of these environmental toxins, firemen, that kind of, depending. And again, it depends on how good their safety, I think, how good, I can't think of the word. I can't think of it's not safety. It's
protective equipment.
Yeah, their protective equipment, exactly. And they probably, farmers don't wear masks when they're, in the tractor when they're spraying the crops, etc. And they probably don't wear protective shields or anything like that, which they probably should do. But I think something else that you touched on, which is really interesting, is thyroid, and the fact that women are like 3 times more likely to have a thyroid issue, and men actually don't get picked up for thyroid issues until I think it's over 50 or 60, isn't it? So younger men often I think in Western conventional medicine, the thyroid of men, they're 2 words that often just don't go together. So it, even when they get their TSH measured, I think it's just that thing where it's just not as common as with women. So it just is less likely to be picked up.
Review can look at it. We're looking at a full panel and then seeing, is that the case for you? As something being told it's normal and your thyroid's at 3.5, which that wouldn't be normal. But we're not just focusing on the TSH. It's looking at the other markers and really, are there gut issues or liver issues where you're not able to convert it?
Yeah. And gosh, we could spend a whole podcast going down the whole thyroid picture for both men and women. But I think it's really good that you've brought that up, that it's not just affecting women's fertility, that it affects men's fertility, because of course the thyroid affects, your energy in every cell in your body. You've touched on this already, what lifestyle factors can influence the quality and quantity of sperm, but also your overall health. I think you touched on some of them in terms of like jobs, but what other lifestyle factors do you see that have a big impact?
Sleep, which is key for both men and women. Many of the times when I ask men, are you snoring? Many of them are snoring. And so then is it, which that can impact your cardiovascular system, like in your whole body. So to look at sleep studies, or first of all, you can do, like there's a snore app called Snore Lab. You can see, are you snoring? So affecting your quality of sleep. And then also, then you can get a sleep study to see, do you need a like it could be a CPAP or maybe it's a mouth guard. So it's not just saying that you
Yes.
got to do it, that you're doomed for the, Darth Vader mask. It could be, yeah, mouth tape can then be really helpful for, just because many of them are like mouth breathers. And if you say to yourself, "Ooh, I could never do that. That sounds absolutely horrendous." That is interesting to be able to train yourself to be able to breathe through your nose. And the mouth tape for a little bit can be like, it sounds a little barbaric, but it can be like really helpful for people. There's a whole book, I can't remember the name of the book, that talks about the training yourself to breathe through your nose.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes actually, but a friend of mine recently told me about it, and it's funny, I haven't tried the mouth tape, but I have consciously started now to really make sure that I close my mouth and I'm doing things to do, to breathe. And it is amazing how it does take some training for you to get used to doing that. It's the same as when you run, you're meant to breathe through breathe in through your nose, and I just can't do it. And it's interesting. You can train it. Like you said, it seems a bit barbaric and suffocating, but it is, really good.
Like the sleep piece, to me, for both men and women, like the overworking piece, if you're working more than 50 hours a week, that can impact, your mental, emotional stress, creating boundaries, slow down, like the exercise thing. We see people either under exercising or over exercising. So if you're like, wait, we're asking you to slow down, you're like, I can't do it. That's my stress release. To be able to see like 2 hours in the gym, how is that impacting your cortisol levels? So maybe your outlet, but how are you the next day? Are you exhausted? Are you getting these energy dips, and maybe that exercise to pull back, is it too much? And same for, if you're sitting on the couch too much and not moving, you're sedentary, it's important to get some movement, would be key. The mental emotional stuff around obviously the fertility journey. So for the men, they may feel they need to be strong for their partner, and they may not have told anyone about this. Typically women are, setting up anonymous Instagram profiles, or they're joining Facebook groups, so they have support that way with forums or online chat groups. They may have told a few people, but men typically haven't told anyone. And so just like with female factor infertility, femininity being wrapped up in that, perhaps feeling broken, or feeling, why is my body failing me? Women may feel that. And for the male partner, have the same thing, being the masculinity being wrapped up in their, why aren't I able to have a child? So, and feeling shame around that, or guilt, not feeling empowered. So those sort of emotions are key to address, because then it's interesting. I just interviewed on my podcast there a urologist, and just talking about and it's interesting where the woman will have had all these tests, like all the structural side of things, a lot of making sure the tubes are clear and all the structural tests, and then the men may not even have done a semen analysis, or even have had any kind of check for varicocele, or done any kind of examination with a physician, because it's just like, they're not comfortable even doing that. And so we always have the male partner, even if it is female factor infertility, doing a semen analysis, getting a blood chemistry review. And sometimes even doing that, we're like, we have to follow up a lot to get people to get men to do it. And because also, doing a semen analysis, who really wants to do that? And so they do have, in the States, they have at-home ones now where you can do that, because with your physician, it's a whole thing to go and do that. So, but it's important for, that's why we're coaching couples, because, and sometimes the man may not even have said how, to his partner, how he feels, because he feels he has to be strong. So, to address that, the impact of male fertility, and even if it's not male infertility, it's still, they want to, similar to a woman's, expand their family, have children, and being able to voice how they feel without feeling, if they're not strong, that the whole thing will fall apart.
I think you've touched on an amazing piece there, and I think it's such an important piece, because I think Men and women are different, and the way that we deal with things are different. And quite often, I mean, many of the women that I work with, not everybody, but are that sort of type A, like you said you are and I am, and you take that sort of action approach, and you kind of get on with things. Whereas the guys, they kind of often get dragged along. But as you said, just because they're not speaking about it doesn't mean that they're not getting stressed about it. It might be that they just don't necessarily know how to talk about it. They don't know where to start with things. Or the fact that, yeah, if they voice that they're worried about it, that they feel, that they're weaker because they're not there to support their partner. Because, of course, often the women are kind of going through this stress piece with it. And especially if you've got, the woman has been told she's got endometriosis or adenomyosis or PCOS with that, or, thyroid issues with it, then, the men feel that they've got to be there to be supportive to them, and don't think about themselves and voicing that side, that emotional side, that they should do that. And I think it is really important. So thank you for raising it. I mean, how do you find when you're coaching couples, what, in terms of sort of giving the listeners tips, how can women, because it might be more women are listening to this than men. So there's two portions. I'm hoping that men will listen to this episode, but if it is just women, how can they help, their guys, and vice versa, what the guys can do for themselves in terms of this sort of emotional side of things?
Yeah, I think it's important for the woman to be able to, like, okay, they're both hurting, right? So letting him share his emotions with you. And then if that's not comfortable, like having a coach or a therapist to help you, like not going this alone. If the two of you, if it's impacting your marriage, like most people that I'm coaching, they're deeply in love. They want to have their children. Other ones, they want to rip each other's heads off. Like I've been in, I'm like, I would not want to be a therapist. I'm like, oh my goodness, it can really put a strain on a marriage. Yeah, the woman may feel that their partner is not listening to them, but equally, the partner is like, well, you're not listening to me either. So that's when it is like, we will flag like super early if there's things going off. Like we flag to a therapist, we flag couples coach, couples therapy, all of this to get you back on track, because this can bring you closer together or rip you apart. So if one person does not feel comfortable to share how they're feeling, it is really important to get outside. And if maybe it's not about forcing anyone to feel that, share their emotions. It's like offering like a safe space where they're like, wait, I can actually say how I feel here, and I don't need to be, because infertility impacts all aspects of your life for both men and women.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that. And I think every couple is different. How they approach it is different, and how they do or don't talk about it is very different. And I would have to say that a lot of the time it is about dealing. I mean, certainly in what I'm, working with endometriosis, my focus is most of the time on the woman and her endometriosis and various other sort of things that come along with it. But I do actually, I like to speak to the guys as well to see what's going on. And they seem, they are very receptive when I do speak to them, but I feel like it could be more of they could be part of that process, from the onset a lot sooner. But when you start this process, often it's quite difficult to get the guys buy-in. And it's coming back to that, if they've been told, if they have had a sperm test, that they are fine. Yeah. And particularly, I think if the woman has got a condition, a pretty severe one like endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, or various other things, they do take that sort of responsibility on, that it's their fault, and they feel responsible, and they have this burden, and they blame themselves. They feel, like they need to fix themselves. And I've been there, and you take on that responsibility, and you almost think, well, my partner doesn't need to do as much. But, I'd love to know how to encourage to get the guys buy in on improving their overall health, and their fertility, how to, get them into the clinic, into the coaching at the beginning rather than say further on. So it's, and getting their buy-in for changing their nutrition and lifestyle. Because a lot of the time, and I find this with my clients, the guys are very supportive and they will go along with a lot of the changes, because a lot of it does come in, you're not cooking separate meals, it comes by and by, and the guy starts to feel a bit better because they are then, their nutrition's changed because of the cooking at home, etc. So I'd be interested to know how, perhaps you've got examples that you could share from your clinic where men have been skeptical and then, you found talking to them, has it opened their mind up?
Yeah, all we ask is that men have an open mind. Like we're not here to convince someone. If you're not into it, then it's not right for you. If you're like, wait a minute, this sounds horrible, I don't really want to participate, then that's not like someone that we really want to work with. So we want someone to have an open mind. And most people are whatever I need to do, I am there to look at things and, show me a plan. They like a plan. We're all about. And so, yeah, it is not about the woman over here making all these diet changings and the guy still going to McDonald's. It is, you guys are cooking together. Like we had one in the spring, a 5-day fertility diet plan. And really it was like all like chef prepared recipes, or you guys are cooking together and you're, the meals are cooked with love and you're connecting in the kitchen. And then it just, it kind of spills over to other things. You're eating 3 times a day. So many of us are both partners are at home right now. That's going to start changing a little bit, but this time has been the time where you can connect more. So it is to have an open mind and to be willing to look at, areas of your life. Most people, there's things we can do to optimize our health, even if the semen is normal. So, but there has to be a willingness. If we're going to convince you, and you're like, we've had people that they're like, oh, yeah, fine, I'll just come. And they didn't have an open mind. And guess what? It didn't work because they were just kind of like, I'm not into it. So, and it's hard, right? Where some women are like, oh, my husband, I have to put the supplements out for him. He won't do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you just have to lead by example. You have to do your thing and he will come when he's ready. I know, like I made my dietary changes and there's my husband eating a pack of cheese curds and on a Friday, and then on a Monday he'd be like dying with a sinus infection. I'm like, you think it might be the cheese and the dairy in there? Oh, I don't think so. And then 7 months later he came over and started making the dietary changes, and now he doesn't do dairy or gluten. Not to say that's going to be the case for you, but my husband had chronic sinusitis for years, and so yeah, like it's never coach your partner. I really do believe in getting like outside help for this. If you start nagging and it just is not good for the relationship. It's not good for you and it's to get outside support with this and lead by example.
And I think you touched on a really important point there is and you explained it really well. It isn't about coaching your partner. And I think, and I've been there, and done it too many times myself. Yeah. And it's, you can lead to a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And if they're not ready to do something, years ago when my husband and I first met, he smoked, I did a long time ago as well. And, I wanted him to give up. But when I asked him to, he didn't. But when he was ready, he did. And it was really easy when he did. It's this whole mental, whatever it is, they have to, anybody, whoever you are, you have to be yourself, bought into whatever you're doing. You can't be dragged into it. And I think what you said there, getting outside help is often the way to do it. Because I know that I've certainly felt like a nag in saying, can you do this? Can you take your supplements? Why are you eating that? I know it makes you feel, and you end up feeling nag. It puts that strain on your relationship. And I think getting the outside help, like you said, people will often listen to someone else that isn't your nearest and dearest. And, you can often get your heckles up with your partner if you're being told to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, really good. Before we sort of finish off, it would be really good if we could summarize just a few nutrition lifestyle improvements that you recommend to your clients to work with, sort of just as summary points to take away with, what have you found that's been most well received and implemented?
Yeah, like first of all, switching to organic, making sure that you have grass-fed meat and wild caught fish and organic produce. If that's cost prohibitive, like the Dirty Dozen, at least the ones that are the top sprayed foods. But to me, organic produce just like if the person has to wear a hazmat suit or like a Tyvek suit and a mask, like those farmers to spray the crops, why do we think that's a good idea putting in our body? So going organic, if you're into the, first step we say is do the elimination diet, which is 10 days. You can do anything for 10 days, take out the top allergens and then systematically reintroduce them. Those are dairy, gluten, soy, corn, peanuts, and eggs, processed sugar. Take them out and then see how your body feels when you bring them each one of those back in. And it's not about you going vegan. You can have grass-fed meat and fish and some veggies, and you can do sweet potatoes, or you can even do a carb, like a white rice. So that's from the nutrition piece. And then focus on sleep. Like we see so many people with disrupted sleep, be it interrupted sleep, waking up during the night, waking up feeling exhausted, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up between 2 to 4 in the night. So snoring. So really focus all efforts on sleep, 7 to 9 hours, 9 hours always best. Dark room, sleep mask, do the blue light blocking glasses. Make sure you get a good pair to block yourself from the green and blue light from your tablet, your cell phone. Those can impair your melatonin production, which then impacts both male and female fertility. So do that, and then you put on the glasses and just fall asleep a lot easier. So the sleep piece, and then the mindset piece, like focusing, the hashtag self-care, but self-care is a thing. So thinking of things that you like, be it, you can do, like, it's also it's important for boundaries, right? If you find yourself, like self-care is about setting boundaries. You find yourself working more than 50 hours a week, you're at a kind of a burnout point, you're not having time for yourself, being able to see what it is you really enjoy, and really trying to connect more as a couple. We do in our program, one of the little exercises of the love languages. So what figure out what your partner's love language is, and give him more of that, and you'll get, and if he knows yours, then he can give you his. So it's sort of, you do give others what they need, they'll end up giving what you need, instead of, if you're feeling, depending on how you're feeling, if you're feeling that, the connection is lost a little bit, or you're feeling stressed out, getting back to what you guys like to do together when you first met, before the fertility journey hit you.
I think that's lovely. I love that. Love languages. And I think it's all too often we kind of lose the, joy in life, the joy in the relationships. But I love that, love languages, and in terms of, because we speak different languages, we have different needs, and often we don't understand each other's needs. And I think talking about it is really important. So you really brought up a really good point. So thank you. Are there any specific supplements that you recommend for guys at all?
Yeah, so we have like basic supplements we recommend for both female and male fertility. So for the men, it's a multivitamin, a good professional quality one, not buying it off of Amazon. You want to make sure it doesn't have dyes or fillers or any of the top allergens in it. CoQ10, a vitamin D. You want to make sure you get it tested as well, but a vitamin D3, K2. Probiotic with like a spore-based probiotic, so it's not based on dairy, so it's spore-based, which is Megaspore. We like an omega, and what's that? So a probiotic, multi, CoQ10, vitamin D, and magnesium. Everyone is like 85% of us are deficient in magnesium, so it impacts like all function, like so many functions in the body. So magnesium. I think those are the main ones we start. And then, when we do look at blood chemistry and testing, then we would recommend additional supplements based on health history and testing.
Excellent. And in terms of testing, you mentioned that you like to get semen analysis and also sort of do blood chemistry. Are there any other tests that you would highly recommend, or it entirely depends on kind of them as a person when you see them?
Yeah, like typically we're looking at food sensitivity testing coupled with the elimination diet. And then we're doing stool testing, looking at the DNA of your stool, and then hair tissue mineral analysis testing.
Great.
We may do hormone testing using the Dutch as well, too, if necessary.
Yeah, brilliant. Are there any resources or things you want to share or highlight for people to refer to?
I think I like the app, the Snore Lab, so they can do that. Check their snoring. Sleep Cycle is another good app to check to see how deep the sleep is you're getting. Skin Deep database, that's where you go and check your products, and you want so that's the Skin Deep database, or you go to ewg.org. You can find it in there as well. That's where the Dirty Dozen foods are, and then the Skin Deep database is where you're checking your products. There's like Defender Shield is the one for the laptop protector and the lap cases, and they also have there's also Lambs, which is underwear, so EMF protecting underwear. So
oh wow,
yeah, which is kind of cool. They have like little hats, cool. They have shirts, and now they have the underwear, and they have the underwear for both men and women. So so those are some cool resources. And get yourself a nice stainless steel or glass water bottle.
Oh, excellent. And I know you also mentioned earlier that you'd done a recent podcast on male fertility, hadn't you? So which episode, do you know which episode that was? I will put it in the show notes as well, but in terms of anything that you personally kind of like cover that's worth highlighting.
Yeah, I just did a series of 4 actually. So they came out on, depending on when this comes out. So it came out, I did on May 10th, May 17th, 24th, and 31st, all on male fertility. So I interviewed, so myself and someone from my functional nutrition practitioner from my team talk about the themes. And then we talk about the semen analysis. We're talking about those functional reference ranges. I interviewed Dr. Shauna Swan all about her study, the book Count Me In. And then I interviewed a urologist who's a functional medicine urologist. Like this guy's, it was just a freaking great interview. Like he just is like someone that's, super smart. And then he's like taking the conventional side, which is the functional medicine, which is the future of conventional medicine, where you're not ignoring all the conventional side of things, looking at the structural and testing and perhaps medication. But he's like, we've got to look at the toxin exposure, the environmental exposure, the food sensitivities, the mental emotional stress. So it's interesting to hear a urologist talking all about that. And he's a cool guy. And then the next one was with a functional medicine physician, and she's talking all about testosterone and erectile dysfunction, low libido. So yeah, like really cool episodes.
Oh, amazing. That's fantastic. And I will include all of those on the show notes. So loads of information for the audience, you people to look at. So why did you want to inspire and help other women?
Yeah, when I discovered the functional medicine, I'm like, I can't believe other people don't know this. I'm like, are you kidding me? So in the beginning, I was on a little soapbox with my friends and stuff like that. And then I started a podcast. So just to really share, I don't want people to struggle like I did with this, diagnosis. We've helped many people with premature ovarian failure and insufficiency, diminished ovarian reserve, low AMH, high FSH, get pregnant naturally when they've been told that, donor eggs are their only option. They get pregnant naturally, or if they do go to the clinic, getting pregnant with their own eggs when they follow the protocols. These are devastating diagnoses, and many people, they can't see a positive outcome, and they may jump to the donor egg before they've healed all the things, or they may even just self-sabotage and give up because, they're complex cases, and it's not typically just ooh, we go gluten-free. And, that has happened. Many people listen to my podcast, probably similar to you, and they could change, one thing in their diet and it could work. But typically it's more complex cases. They've been through, years of failed IVFs, IUIs, being told by a well-meaning RE that you will struggle, that you have a 2% chance, and that gets embedded in the subconscious. So we take a mind, body, spirit approach and include your partner. And I've got a whole team together with a OBGYN, with a functional medicine background, functional nutrition practitioners, like to really no stone left unturned to look at this to see how do we help a couple get pregnant naturally. So, because I don't want other people to have to struggle like I did. Obviously I had 2 great children, but my health took a nosedive afterwards, and I didn't know there was any other options.
Thank you. And I think that's amazing. It's amazing what you do, and what you've developed as a result out of your own painful journey. So thank you. Finally, something I always ask is, what is one takeaway thing from you that listeners could use?
Yeah, I think this is from Dr. Mark Hyman. Like, your body is always whispering to you, and when you ignore the signals, it'll start shouting in the form of disease. So you know your body best, and it's not just about myopically focusing on the infertility diagnosis. It's looking at the other little issues, and that's why I tell my story about all the the vertigo, the toenail infections, the dandruff, like all these other weird, the acne, all these other little weird, seemingly unrelated issues. Those are potential healing opportunities. So your body best, and to trust your body.
Excellent. So where can women find and connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Get Pregnant Naturally. It's on Spotify or iTunes and any other platform you can find podcasts. And then also I have a fertility diet challenge. So we just launched one in the spring of 2021. So it's all chef prepared recipes, 5-day challenge. So you can dip your toe into the anti-inflammatory fertility diet. So they can go to fertilitydietfreebie.com and download the recipes and start cooking with their partner.
Excellent. That sounds amazing. Thank you, Sarah, for coming on the show. It's been amazing to hear from you, and you have shared some really, really very vital information and resources with my listeners today, which I know that they're going to find amazing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Lizzie.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and have some useful tips and actions you can take away and put into practice. This podcast is to add to your knowledge so you can delve into the whys behind your endo and fertility struggles and move forward with thriving and conceiving. It is not meant to replace your current medical advice. If you loved listening, then make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. It would be amazing if you could take a minute to leave a review, as it will help in reaching more women who might benefit. Even better, if you know someone who would love to listen to this episode, then please share. If you want to find out more about who I am and what I do, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group, Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis, where I share all sorts of nutrition and health nuggets. My website, endofertilityspecialist.com, provides you with lots of information, including my Endofertility 1-to-1 health coaching program. Lastly, don't forget to sign up to my Endofertility Inner Circle to receive weekly news. The links are all in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next week for another episode.